normally do, and then we'll kick it off. All right, so welcome everybody to another round of Open Game Data Open Office Hours. So just a reminder, this Open Game Data community, wow, come on, there we go, is an NSF-funded research incubator designed to bring together a collective of researchers who are interested in the use of data generated in and around games to advance our scientific understanding of learning, thinking, and decision-making. And we have two primary goals here. One is to convene that community in general, give them a place to talk, share ideas. And then the other one is to build some actual hard research infrastructure for us to actually do these kinds of techniques and processes together. We already have some resources that exist right now. So the Open Game Data website hosted at Field Day Games at University of Wisconsin-Madison is a great example of what we're liking, where we want to go towards, of ways to share data and work in this space. We also have a Slack server where we convene and organize these things. And then we have these open office hour sessions, which this recording is one of, where people share their work in progress, get feedback, show off cool ideas, and we're collecting those up as a set of examples. So the way these sessions work, they're inspired by a series of sessions that the Statistical Education Research Group used to do at Carnegie Mellon, where somebody who's typically a student, sometimes a postdoc, would present on work that they were doing in progress on some complex analysis, and a statistical faculty member would be there working with them publicly. And it could be anything from like, show me your R code and fix this one parameter, to what actually is your research question and are you approaching this at all in the right way? And being in that audience was incredibly useful. I think I've said multiple times that everything I learned about statistics at Carnegie Mellon was from these sessions and not from any class I took. And so we're doing that here, thinking about games and data and helping people work together. And these sessions are recorded pending approval of the presenter, so they can go into our library of resources. So quick things to keep in mind, presenters are often showing stuff that is in progress work, and so it might not be fully polished, it might not have all the ideas in the right place, and that's partly why they're doing it. But keep in mind that that can take some courage, and maybe not everything is fully ready for the public, but that's why we're here to talk about it. Our goal here is to help the presenter achieve their goals and get out of this what they need. But also these sessions are intended for learning for everybody involved. So if somebody brings up an idea or a thought that you've never heard of or you don't understand, feel free to raise a hand and ask a question. Or if you have something to share for the presenter, feel free to do that as well. And with that, we will hand off to Elaine, who is our presenter for this week.
Fabulous. Hi, everybody. My name's Elaine. I'm the lead game designer at the Center for Transformational Play at Carnegie Mellon. I just dropped the slides into the chat, but I'm also just going to share my screen. Before we get started, I'm going to show you the shape of the information I think I'm going to give you in the next 10 minutes, just so that people can stop me and say, hey, to be helpful, we need X, Y, or Z before I even get started. I am here today to talk to you about a LARP. Can you give me like a thumbs up and an emoji if you're familiar with LARP at all in any way, shape, or form? We got some variant. All right, cool. And if you're not, give me a holler or say something in the chat and I can totally explain. We're doing a weird one today, guys. It's an analog LARP. I'm going to, I think in the next 10 minutes, give you an overview of the game, show you part of a video of people playing, just so you have that in your head, and then kind of show you just a folder with the full material so you can see what the players get. I have a slide of here's what we're trying to learn. So we have some hypotheses based on existing research, and then what we think the game ought to do based on how we designed it. But my big thing is, here are the questions, right? Like, how do we get this information from observations before and after? And I can also talk to you about some things that I've either done in previous game projects or what we might try. But that's really where we're at, is like, I would like to move towards a plan for here's how we collect data from an analog game. Based on these slides, I want to pause and just say, like, what other information do you need from me to be helpful today before I get started?
Quick point, people need access to, I think, both the slides and the docs.
Excuse me?
I think some people don't have access to the slides, and then the docs that are linked on slide 2, I think some of them people need access to those too.
Aha, that's great. I bet it is because I have this all as Carnegie Mellon. No, this is just restricted. All right, let's fix that. We have people from multiple universities here today?
Yep.
All right, I'm just everybody into everything. Here we go. Here we go. Share that. as well. Okay, everyone should have access to the slides now. Give me a holler if that's not true. And I'm about to fix the game files. Great. Now you should have access. Everybody should have access to the facilitator guide. Last but not least, let's get you that folder. I see people coming in. Great. While I'm doing that, are there other things that you need to know from me that I should share during this overview that are not included in those slides?
I think a quick overview of what's the game, how does it work, and then what you're trying to get out of it is a good start. And then we'll probably have other questions that I don't know if you necessarily need to share as a document, but will be things we'll ask about.
All right, that sounds great. That sounds great. Okay, I'm going to pull the chat up again. Yep, so you should now have access to everything. Please post in the chat if you don't. Oh, Abby's here. Hi, Abby. That's great. Okay, so here's the high-level overview of what this game is. It is a LARP for between 10 and 40 people. Overall, the theme of the game is that working with people who are trained in other disciplines from you is very hard. It's hard for a variety of reasons. When you get trained, you learn different vocabulary to talk about the same concepts. You're trained to prioritize different things. So how do you do that? How do you do that in a way that's effective? How do you learn how to work together? And like, what's the benefit, right? Because a lot of people just don't see the benefit of that at all. It's too hard. Why would we do that? So we had a client who called Remake Learning. They're an education reform community here in Pittsburgh. They have a variety of skills and strategies that they want people to use to either start something similar in their own community or just learn how to work across disciplines better. The game itself is called Monsters of Appalachia. The idea is that there is an ensuing catastrophe that different groups of cryptids in North America need to come together and solve. So everybody gets a faction. You can be a Bigfoot, you can be a Loveland Frog. There's 3 others. The vibes are very much you're going to come in with your faction and your own goals. You pick your faction based on a short personality test we give you that has got some parallels probably to how you were trained in your discipline. You win the game. It is cooperative for sure. Like every faction can win, or only some factions can win. You come in with these goals and these character sheets that I can also share from the folder. And you are going to spend, the first hour just getting to know players, and then the game opens up significantly, and you spend the rest of the time negotiating, trading resources. It's a diplomacy kind of LARP, right? You're talking, you're wheeling, you're dealing. Here is, let's see, here's an example of a character sheet, right? So you get a name, and we ask you to reflect on your best and worst self. And there's some internal mechanics for when you're going to act like your worst self versus your best self. And you've got some secret information, some nudging about what to do if you're not sure what to do. You form some bonds before the game starts with cryptids across other communities to kind of incentivize you to start talking to them. And then you've got these goals. And when you unlock a certain number of goals, you get access to different resources. So we're also pulling from different sort of murder mystery type things here. Let's see, is there anything else that I absolutely want to show you from the game materials? I guess the only other thing before I show you the video of people playing is that everything the player gets is couched in this like magazine that you actually can carry around while you play. The moth people in the game are sort of the documenters, and so they put out these annual reports every year. And so you get this like magazine that is a mix of like framing, here's the world, here's what it feels like, here's what these different factions are known for, here's how to use this, little information about like how the structure of the time goes. And then at the very end, basically they're going to elect one individual to be the crown cryptid who's going to make a bunch of decisions about what happens after the game is over. So this is what the materials look like. Let's see. Here is a video of people playing the game. Let's see, checking my time here. And I'll probably keep it on mute just because I don't know how the sound quality is going to be. can you hear the sound if I turn it up, or should I just, okay, then I'll just show you like, so this is, if you were to come in the middle of a game, like this is, you'd be seeing a lot of this, right? You've got these representatives, they're wearing the sash from their faction, they're like holding, this is back when we were doing paper prototyping, so it doesn't look quite so much like a paper explosion anymore, right? But you're seeing people like getting together in small groups and like basically trying to negotiate issues, right? They're saying yes and no, and like you can do this and do that. Let me see if I've got an end of game thing where they're voting. I do not. Okay, but like that's what it looks like. Questions about the feel or the gameplay before I go on to basically what we're trying to learn or what our goals are for this game.
So what's the context you envision this game getting played? Because I think that's going to affect a lot
Yep.
of data collection.
Thank you for asking that. We want this to be run in two different scenarios. We want this to run at conventions and conferences. So we would want us or Remake Learning to be able to take this to like an education reform conference or a game conference, and just basically under the banner of like, do you want to work better with people who are trained differently from you? Come play this thing. We have a version that is 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours long. And what you do there is you like get the demo, but then we send you home with all the materials that you need to play the full version with somebody at home. Or if people are feeling really ambitious, we have one that takes like 5 hours to play. But that tends to not fit very well in a conference schedule. It's a lot of time to ask people to commit right up front. So we do like a demo version or a final version. We also want Remake Learning or us to be able to, like, let's say somebody's doing a site visit at one of our organizations. We want to be able to pull people in and be like, this is an activity we're going to do to demo it. Am I answering your question, Eric?
Yeah, totally.
Sweet.
And then Dave also put a question in the chat, 100% adults or?
Yes.
Okay.
18 and up.
Go ahead.
And then a related one too is, so what are the intended outcomes?
Yep, absolutely. We have three. One, we want to shift people's perceptions and attitudes about working across disciplines. Am I answering your question? I just want to make sure before I like get in. Yes.
So yeah, I think
yeah, okay. I'll start and then you can tell me like no.
Yeah.
So I'll do it transformational framework style, right? From believing that it's not really worth the time and effort to get together with people from other disciplines to try and solve your problems, to feeling like it might be worthwhile and like how to do it in a way that is worthwhile. That's the first one. Second is kind of a stretch goal is skill building. Like we've seen in the literature that LARPs can help people practice skills like diplomacy, communication, figuring out how to talk to people with different information or attitudes than you. Like, is any of that transferring, right? Like, am I going to be able the next time I am talking to somebody else, be able to employ some skills that are going to help make that conversation go better? And then the third are people learning specific strategies that Remake Learning is suggesting. So like an example is that it can actually be really helpful to have a phase of whatever thing your get together has to have some open-ended time. And there's reasons for that. And it can feel a little counterintuitive. Like, why in the world would I just get together with, devs and people who are researching and designers and just say, we're going to do 30 minutes of like empty your pockets and tell me what problems you're trying to solve? That can feel really weird, but that can be really good, right? Or like, what does it mean? Like, why would I ever try to solve goals that my org couldn't solve on their own? Like, well, because some people have resources that they don't need, but you need. We want people to sort of develop a gut sense of how those systems work so that the time feels worth it, even though they don't know what outcomes they're going to get. So those are really our big three.
Okay. Can I ask you a quick, because I heard you quickly say transformational framework style.
Yeah.
For those on the call who don't work at the Center for Transformational Play, can you explain what that means?
Absolutely. So Sabrina Sulba, CulYba, has a really great free online resource called the Transformational Framework. And it is a pre-production framework for defining what you want a game to change people to do. It is awesome. And I think there's a heavy emphasis, I would say, on the before and after state of your players, right? So what are they doing when they come in? What do you want them to do differently when they come out? Is it knowledge? Is it attitude? Is it skill? We have a little bit of those three. She also has like, I don't know, like 8 other categories of how somebody could be changed by a game.
Yeah, I always loved that framework. It goes like it's like knowledge, attitude, skill, physical, and then it goes like belief, identity, society is the last one. So like
Yeah,
very ambitious spectrum of transformation.
extremely.
Um, is there a way that you could expand on the remake's 5Cs?
Yeah,
Uh,
I sure can. I'm laughing because it's been about 2 months and I might not be able to rattle off all of them, but basically they looked backwards at what's been working for them and they tried to codify it into 5 things that they're calling the 5Cs. And it's things like convene. It can be helpful to get people together, even if you're not entirely sure what the outcomes are, if you time bound it and do these specific things. Coordinate. Identify which people in the group have similar but not totally identical goals and start looking for overlap. Catalyze. Figure out who has resources that are functionally useless to them that like might be good for somebody else. Convene, coordinate, catalyze. You know what? That is the end of what my brain is willing to do right now. And here's the thing. This is a great segue because the important thing is not that players leave with those 5 things memorized. What we want is for people to do this experience. And then when we say in the debrief, like, hey, what would you do if you were doing a reform community? We want them to gut sense, be like, it was really interesting that some people had things that they didn't want, but other people did. Like, cool. That's called catalyze. You should do that, right? So we don't need them to memorize it. We need them to have a gut sense that it might be something worthwhile to do.
okay.
Gosh, I love all the frameworks here. Everything's so defined.
I like a good framework. What was the quote? All frameworks are wrong. Some frameworks are helpful.
Elaine, I'm doing the thing that I do in the background during meetings and dropping links to everything. So the 5
Thank
C's
you.
are in the chat.
Thank you. Thank
Looks
you,
like
Abby.
the last 2 are communicate and champion.
Hey, that's great. Yeah. Champion in particular is maybe good for this group to know about. That's about actually cataloging wins so that you can do it again. That's which I noticed were some of the goals of this group that we're in right now. Yeah, so feel free, please, to check those out.
Right.
Yeah.
I do think if you're really interested in trying to measure these as outcomes, like sure, they don't necessarily need to remember the taxonomy of the 5, but that second, so you said like coordinate means X. That means X is extremely important to have spelled out because that's what they need to learn.
Yes.
Whether that it's called communicate, not super important, but what the actual behavior is, we need to know that.
And that's actually a perfect segue. I can tell you what I've thought about doing so far, what we have thought about doing so far.
Great.
A lot of LARPs, based on what I've read, a lot of the concrete learnings actually can happen in the debrief. So one way that I've thought about trying to collect data here, I used to be a high school teacher, and I'm imagining a debrief where I get people to talk about the experience and what they learned. I give them those definitions, but then they write essentially like an exit ticket style survey where it's like, what would you like kind of just asking directly, like what would they make of this? Are they able to say the definitions? It's not the same thing as them being able to do it. So that's, there's limitations there. There's also just limitations in self-report, right? Like if they do the game and they don't get better at talking to each other during the game, like I'm not confident that they're going to be able to employ these. So number 1, debrief and rubric and treating it more like a lesson plan where I would do a knowledge check. Number 2, I've done games like this before where I've had a rubric for what better or more effective skill looks like during the game, ideally verified by some kind of external research that has already happened that's not related to this game, and then have observers going around and literally saying like, okay, this person is scoring a 2 at hour 1, but they're scoring like a 5 at hour 3. I've thought about doing that. I've also thought about doing a pre-post. I've seen some things about both like empathy, but also attitudes about things in other studies where you give people like a scenario or a situation and you see if they're better at empathizing at the end than they were at the beginning. Abby, your hand is up. Oh, or Maurice. I don't know who was first. I'm sorry.
One of the things that I've used in other LARP settings to get feedback and or to sway community behavior is
Mhm.
giving people stickers that they can give to somebody else. So I see you using Catalyze as right,
Ooh.
and you just stick a sticker on their name badge, and you write, one sticker is you did it, I saw it. 2 stickers is you did really good, or I see you trying really hard, and 3 is wow, you knocked it out of the park. And then during the debrief, you're like, hey, so in the cases where I've seen this used wasn't for feedback or collecting data, it was actually to sway group behavior and get people moving in particular directions. But I can see where during the debrief be like, okay, I see that you got a 1, a 2, and then a 2. Like, what did you change between the 1 and the 2 that you got more acknowledgement for practicing this skill?
It's really interesting. Maurice.
So first off, thank you. I'm loving all this. So just
Thank
a
you.
little bit of my background. I'm like engaging with like a lot of like the learning analytics side of things and some of my research. And one of the things that I've been contending with is like even like the notion of like a board game, like, oh, what kinds of like analytics can you get from playing a board game? Because like you're dealing with a similar issue. It's like, wait, these are all like very tangible, like it's non-digital. Like, how do you do
Yeah.
this? So some of the things that we've been contending with was, so first off, have you considered using like sensors or using like a multimodal analytics thing? My
That's cool.
advisor literally just does like multimodal stuff. So
Mhm.
I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention it.
I would be open to that, totally.
Yeah, so that would be one thing that I'd be throwing out there, but I think that you're kind of like on the right track of behaviors or actions that can be taken that can ultimately manifest data and analytics in some way. One of the things that we are really pushing ourselves on, again, engaging with this notion of like a board game, is there like some kind of process that you can have like the players do that when they go look at it after the fact, it's now in a form that is giving them some kind of like insight. And this is for something that's more like directed towards the actual participants. It sounds like what you're looking at is more like directed towards maybe like the designers or the researchers engaging with it after the fact. But I just want to raise those as a couple things, as it's similar to some of the things that I've been thinking on too. So I really love this.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And I'm gonna say it back because wow, this is already so helpful. So Abby, brilliant. I love the idea of like what can we do to make it put it in the physical space, because if we can do the tracking in the physical space, it's already a physical space game. And also like it could help the participants do more of what we're trying to get them to do. So it's an amazing win. Maurice, I'm hearing 2 things, and I think I'm going to need an example of your last one. Number one, like sensor data, right? So like taking what we know about how to measure things in board games and applying them here. That's amazing. I know basically nothing about that, but I bet I can go read about it. But the third thing you said, I think I could use another example. Could you tell me about a game or a situation where you've seen that happen?
So I don't have like good examples. It's more
That's
of like
okay.
the thought experiment of it.
That's
So
okay.
I think about so I played a game. Let's say Pandemic, for
Yeah,
example.
right.
Right. So when
Some
you're playing the board game,
board game.
yeah. So when you're playing
Yeah.
this game and like you're collecting these pieces, and these pieces are now communicating to you how dire the situation is, or you have to move like this indicator up at the bottom that says this is like the overall pandemic level, and it's giving you like information about the state of the game that isn't necessarily direct. So it's things like that. How do you still communicate information about the game, data about the game, analytics about the game, using these systems that are still manipulated by the player?
Yeah.
Again, it's only like a half-baked thought, but I feel
No,
like
this is really good. Half-baked, appreciated. Yeah, there's all kinds of things we could be doing about like I wouldn't call it this, but like vibe check, right? Like there's could be a large counter about like how good are you feeling about just how this group is working together, right? And everybody could feel free to move it up or down. You know, there's all kinds of interesting things we could do there. Let's see. Oh, thank you for dropping some stuff on digital tools and board games. That's amazing. Thank you, David, for the students giving students stickers and badges. This is so good.
I think the high level thing that immediately comes to mind is almost I'd just say it's inspired by evidence-centered design mashed together with game design. So you're just thinking what are formalisms that can be put into the play that specifically represent states that you care about, that are going to generate evidence or something you care about, whether it is the overall team or the individual. So you're thinking how do you create moments that are formal? Giving a sticker is great. It's a binary. It's did you do it or not? And then there's also the count on the other side. How many did you receive? It formalizes everything in these really tangible ways, even without fancy. It doesn't need to even be high tech. It's just, and I've never seen that in a LARP, right? So I can imagine where it's just way outside of the normal LARP world.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because I think LARP has mechanics that could do that without it maybe being consciously. I've seen the interview booth, for example, right? Oh my gosh, go in there. Let me record how your character's feeling right now.
Yeah, that's a great one. Another thing that I think you could just brainstorm around this idea, but I know the reference I dropped, we even had people self-reflect and do drawings of how their skills had emerged in the language that we defined the skills. So they did what they called it, what was it, a growth tree or some sort of tree. So everybody drew these things, and then those became these artifacts that were data rich.
That's really cool. Yeah, early on, we had this mechanic we were playing with where they were writing postcards back to their faction, and we dropped it for time, but I wonder if there's something we could work back in now that there's a longer version of the game now, where it's more making based.
And if you can use Twitter or text or anything that already exists, then you can data mine it from an automated standpoint.
That's really cool.
So think of how do you drop some signals that are really easily interpreted later.
I love that. I super love that.
I call it Twitter, though. I'm showing my age.
It's still called Twitter.
The fact that I'm even talking about it is what's
I will call it Twitter until it evaporates off the face of the planet. Absolutely.
I think there's an interesting distinction, which I think Dave's kind of pointing at here in terms of your goals, in that there's measuring how people have changed from the game, but there's also measuring how people act within the game. Because they're doing how would you run your organization differently? That's a longitudinal research question.
Yeah, for sure.
That requires a lot of, you just need to be in the boardroom meetings for 2 years to know if it actually worked.
Okay, that makes sense.
But how can you find these moments of people exercising the things you want them to be learning during the gameplay session, and then also maybe in the debrief, and then maybe, I don't know, a week-long follow-up, you do an interview or something. And trying to identify what are the moments of executing on these skills and this knowledge in situ. And I think the sticker thing is really interesting. I think there is an interesting thing with the sticker thing in that it depends on the learning goal, because it's kind of a two-sided assessment question. Because one is, did someone notice you doing X? But then it's also, does the sticker giver properly know how to identify X? And one might be obvious, and so then for an audience that's older, that might be okay. But running it with kids, I could easily see, you did this thing, and I totally don't understand what this thing is, but I'm still going to give you the sticker.
Have a sticker.
And so there's both an identification and an execution side to the knowledge.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think some of the stuff we're trying to measure, it would really depend on the skill level of the audience. I think there's some stuff that's pretty nuanced, and I could see somebody rewarding the wrong stuff, right? You could say, did this person display strong leadership? And some people have a really busted idea of what that means, right? Have the sticker, you talked for 15 minutes. No, please don't reward that. So that's a really great point. Did I interrupt you?
No, yeah.
Okay.
Another question I'd have is, do you have a envisioned sense of players versus facilitators and a ratio of that? You were talking about having people walk around and record stuff.
Yep.
Is it like a 1-to-1? Like how many people does a researcher have to be watching in this game?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's designed to run at a 1 to 10, like one facilitator for every 10 participants. And the facilitator has got like a character role inside the game that is different. But people really are free flowing. There's a lot of like, I'm gonna grab this group of three, get that group of three. And that would be I think that's one of the questions I have on the next slide is like people shift a lot. And the room is intentionally big enough that you can have these one-off side wheeling and dealing conversations. And I do think it would be super weird to have someone following you the whole time.
Could you, I don't know if you want to go on to your next slide just to get the research questions over.
Oh, sure.
Jumping back and forth, but
Yeah.
could you potentially have like sites of nucleation for those conversations? So it's like you can go off and have a side conversation at this table that has a microphone on.
Oh, yeah.
or
No, that's really
something.
smart.
So
Yeah.
essentially having people congregate to sites of collectible interaction
That's
rather
brilliant.
than just go talk off on a side place.
Yeah, no, actually that's really good. Yes, and when we have run the game so far, people congregate around areas that are, have seating or are designated for discussion. So yeah, we could put a mic at, 4 different sites with different rules about how many people are allowed to be there, blah, 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 and then we would be, that's really smart.
I just want
Abby?
to yes and that because it is in the LARP writing world, it is actually completely common to be like, okay, because this is a highly structured game or because this game has specific purposes, go to these tables. Or if you're going to have a conversation that is more than 4 people, every one of you needs to be touching the star in the middle of the table to make sure that you're in range of the microphones. Like those type of mechanisms fade into the background when you've got so much else going on. It doesn't end up interfering with the immersion and the embodiment experience.
That's so good to know, Abby. Thank you. Yeah, right. And then there's stuff that I read, Abby, right, about like, okay, this is the box where nobody can hear you. Here, 2 people at a time can go to this thing.
Yep. Even if you end
Okay.
up with an audience, the fact that you've drawn that rule in your head, the
Yeah.
box works that way for the person in the box most of the time, regardless of whether or not that's how it's happening outside of diegetic space.
Right. That rocks. Here are the questions that I wrote down ahead of time. I think we've already touched on some of these, right? Analog game with heavily emergent gameplay and a lot of player movement. We just covered that, or we've started to. Collecting good data in a conversation debrief. The only tool in my toolkit for that is I record the whole thing and I code it later, or I have them write before they share. If there are other things, I would love to talk about it. Any pre-existing verified scales or methods that can help measure changes in attitude, belief, skill, and strategy. And I'm positive that these are going to be different, right? These are from Sabrina's framework, and they're totally different vectors. And I would love to not reinvent the wheel. Pre and post. So if somebody's really good at doing these things already, I would love to have a measure of that. So change over time, not just we got people who are good. FAR transfer. I think Eric already answered this. I need to go sit in a boardroom for 2 years, which is good to know. And if I think my final one, and if there's probably resources that are outside of this group, so I don't need to take up time about this, but like I have very limited experience submitting an IRB. And when I look at the form, it seems to be wanting really structured, formal ways I'm going to collect the data that I'm having a hard time comparing to how the data would get collected for this game. So these are things on my mind. I'm happy to talk about these in any order if anybody has any thoughts about any of them.
I just want to chime in quick.
Yeah.
Happy to help you solve number 6 offline.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
As someone who literally sits on CMU's IRB, I'm kind of the IRB whisperer for the department. So happy to do that.
Thank you.
Once we've solved the other ones.
Huzzah.
But if people have any thoughts, ideas on these,
Could we maybe try to tackle them one at a time? I don't remember what they all were.
Oh, Yeah, of course. And help me. I'm happy to reread, but also can you see, can
Oh,
people who
okay.
have
Actually, yeah.
access?
I just have to zoom in on the screen. Okay, that's a lot easier.
Let me see if I can get a larger. Does that help at all? I just went into present mode.
That is
Okay.
very helpful. Thank you.
Sweet. Thank you for saying something.
It might actually help just also for taking notes if you break them out into individual slides. So like
Ooh,
number
I
one
like
is
that.
one slide, number two is another slide.
That is really clever. We're going to do that right now. Duplicate just number one.
Yep.
Make that way bigger.
You cut off half of the phrase.
I sure did. It was something like that. How do you collect good observational? La 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 la. Does any, oh yeah, here we go. Okay. There we go. We've been touching on this already, I think.
Mhm.
Player movement. I'm hearing microphones. I'm hearing regions of collecting. Any other thoughts on that before I go to the next one?
I have done some predictably deep dive weirdo thinking about how to wire game spaces for sound capture.
Ooh,
And so
hooray.
at the point that you want to actually get into talking about what space you're going to be using for testing and what that sound capture might look like, and what getting in character and out of character consent for the sound capture looks like, I'm here for this.
Thank you.
Another just CMU local micro note. Are you familiar with the instrumented classrooms in Tepper?
No, I'm not.
They're pretty jealously guarded by the Emberley Center, but they're designed to be generically instrumentable boxes. So you can hang
Wow.
microphones from anywhere in the ceiling. There's like 4 or 5 different cameras. There's like 10 screens all around the space. I've taught in it once, super fun. But remake learning might be a good in to working with them.
That's wonderful.
Dave, did you have a thought?
Yeah, just to keep it on the radar of like thinking about formal mechanics that create easily observed moments that are designed. I just keep it on the radar.
Mhm.
And those combined with, you know, any sort of digital equipment, you know, could be useful. Everything from a button that you press to a, I don't know, we've mentioned stickers or, you know, handing something back, some sort of board that, like, I'm thinking of the what, you know, right behind Eric with the post-it notes, you're like some shared representation of how players think the state is emerging or how players think of each other. So just any way to formalize something that's like very easily captured with a single photograph or something, and it's, you know, data rich.
Mhm.
That's really great.
It's a shame that we don't have Stefan here, but this also seems like a place that would be really valuable for the Bromp technique.
Oh my, yeah, that's a
BROMP, all caps. I can send you the paper later when I find it.
Yeah, there's a million
But
papers on it.
The Bromp technique is you make a small app that lives on a phone or a tablet, and it's essentially a system where a trained observer is like got like a timer countdown and a set of observation behavior things you want. Essentially you're coding in real time. So
Ooh,
it's
okay.
like look at participant X. Are they bump up? Okay, 2 minutes, like half a minute, 30 seconds later, look at participant Y. What are they doing? And it's just like it's a really cool system for capturing those kinds of behavioral things. And then it's also designed to be synced to data that would come out of an intelligent tutoring system or other digital stuff. It's meant to be syncing in situ observation with log data. Whether or not you actually have the log data in this context, immaterial, I think. But it gets you sort of these time-coded micro observations. And there's a formal process for training on it. I've never personally done that, but I think it's not that difficult.
I'm super jazzed about that.
It's kind of like pre iterator reliability before you run, because you have to do it live.
Right. I'm really excited to read about that one. I'm checking the time. Are we comfortable going to the next?
Sure.
All right. All right, I'm going to duplicate that again. Next one is I feel like a lot of this we're hitting a lot. Let's see. How do you collect? Oh yeah, okay. How do you collect good data in a conversational debrief? Is there anything else anybody wants to share about that one?
Oh
So-
man, there's just so much. That's like such a big question too.
Well, part of my question maybe is what makes this different from like a semi-structured interview?
Yeah,
There you go.
that is, thank you. Yeah, let me get really specific. Because my understanding of how some learning and LARPs work, the debrief is serving as a lesson in and of itself. So it's kind of weird because it's constructivist. I'll be asking people to take their experience and then apply it to a thing that then we would then be teaching them and then evaluating them on. And I think my biggest concern is I would be really disappointed if we tried to look at that data later and somebody reviewing the paper or whatever we end up putting out is like, yeah, that worked because you taught a really good lesson on this after the game was over, I think is my biggest risk here. I think. Somebody can tell me if I'm wrong.
So that in LARP design, the debrief is not nowadays. A decade ago, this was very different. But in contemporary LARP design, the debrief design is part of the game design. And so I wonder if actually deliberately in your load in workshop and your load out debrief, actually building that lesson plan deliberately and considering collecting your data somehow a little differently than debrief might not actually be how you hit the goals you're trying to hit.
Yeah, I'd maybe introduce that there's a bit of a distinct, you kind of have a double-barreled question there. One is rhetorical, how do you sell it in a paper? And one is scientific, how do we collect the right data?
That's fair.
The rhetorical one is the debrief is part of the experience.
Yeah.
And it's how do you write it in a paper? But from a scientific standpoint, how are you getting the right assessment out of that experience? I guess one thing that I was maybe unclear on, are you envisioning this, is this a group thing or is this a one-on-one?
The debrief would be a group thing. As it's currently envisioned. It's highly flexible.
Because there you get kind of an interesting, I guess there's kind of a couple different possible layers there. Because if you're trying to do an individual assessment in a group context, you want to make sure you get some amount of signal from every person involved. So if someone just happens to be quiet and they're not participating, then maybe they learned, maybe they didn't, you will never know. So if they have some way that they can all do something that you will get out, if it's not necessarily part of the conversation, I think this is going back to these like creating artifacts that can be measured. On the other hand, given that some of your learning goals are organizational in nature, you could be thinking about, did the organization as like an organism itself learn?
Oh, that's really interesting.
And so then the group becomes the unit of analysis rather than the individual.
I think I've been thinking about it as individual. When I say exit ticket in my head as a high school teacher, I'm going to ask you to write a pretty thorough thing before I let you walk out the door about what you feel like has shifted. So I asked you some questions before you started the game about what your attitudes, opinions are, what you believe, what you think you would do in these scenarios. I'm going to have you answer the same ones at the end. Any other thoughts on that one? Okay. We're going to do choose your own adventure for the next one. So I'm going to bring this up large again. What are people feeling drawn to here? Because we probably won't get to all of these. So the pre-existing verified skills or methods and these different areas that are not just knowledge checks, pre and post assessment, FAR transfer. Choose your own adventure or other things. I have another one on here, which is like, what should I know that I'm not thinking to ask about, right?
Thoughts, preferences? I could potentially riff quick directional answers on some of these questions, but if Maurice,
So maybe I'll just throw out one quick small thing, and Just because, so you're you're concerned about like the how would you explain this and submit this in an IRB. And there are people here that know more than this to me feels like, of the questions that you're asking, I don't want to say it's less important, but I feel like the answer is probably going to be a little bit like you answering the other questions. Like, I don't think it's going to be a matter of like, because at the end of the day with an IRB, you are trying to communicate that like this is ethical, right? That you're not going to like
Yep.
be doing undue harm to your participants. And at the end of the day, like nothing you've said is like alarming to me as oh, you are really gonna have to
Good.
like justify this, right?
good.
So if you having only done my first IRB like
Of
a year
course.
and a half ago,
Yeah.
like I get it, because you're like, what, your head spinning. So I would deprioritize that question and focus on the others personally.
Okay, that's helpful.
I think the answer to that question is answer the other 5 questions.
Yeah.
And then it will become clear, and then I can help you figure out what parts of the form to put it into.
Perfect.
I'll speak really quickly to the instruments one, in that, you know, the quick part will be, yes, they exist. And yes, they're annoyingly large. And so there are tons of like around all those topics that like there are measures, but on average, I'm thinking like ones around interest and stuff, they can be 30 items.
Wowie.
So all of a sudden you start pairing them together and you're like, okay, we did a 20-minute activity. Now we're going to do a 2-hour survey.
Yeah, I hear that. I didn't know that, but that makes sense.
It might be, I doubt that that'll end up being the best way to capture really solid data here. You know, I think going in a qualitative way with your interviews or something, it's just going to be so much more integrated and give a richer, better description anyway. So
I'm feeling a lot of relief just hearing you say that. Yeah.
Especially in these really playful environments, then it's really hard to be like, okay, now we're going to bust out 15 Chromebooks and everybody sit down and be quiet for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah. It feels like a party foul for sure.
Yeah.
Abby?
On the how to measure whether this learning has stuck, one of the things that I have found is unique about LARP as a community management, community expansion, or education tool is that because it is so different from their experiences elsewhere, people who, depending on the size of the game and depending on what mechanism you create for them to stay in touch, whether it is you create a Google group or you create a Facebook group or you have a chat thread that stays live after the event, or there's a Slack channel where everybody from this organization that played this game are still in the Slack channel. It is my experience that the conversation of, hey, this is a thing I learned during this game, or hey, this is a person I met through this game, or a network or a skill. Those conversations come up organically and much more often than I see with other mechanisms for transmitting knowledge or behaviors. And so maybe talking to some LARP runners that have seen that phenomena and figure out what the mechanisms are that facilitate those ongoing communications. I played a Nordic LARP in 2003, where we still come back together and say, this is a thing I learned during that game, and I just saw this dynamic, and did you see this in the media? And it is, I think a lot of it is the embodied play changes how people interact first person with that education. And so I think that looking specifically at how LARP groups continue those conversations and figuring out, can you perpetuate that deliberately after the fact so that people are aware they learned a thing and keep saying to each other, I just saw this thing. There may be ways to track that and encourage that using technology and communication pathways that maybe didn't even exist 10 years ago.
I love that, Abby. That's brilliant.
If you make the Slack channel that they all communicate on, then it could be a source of data in and of itself.
Yeah.
That'd be part of the consent process and all that. That it's like, yes, we will also connect that. Maybe it's a second stage or something, but But if you provide the platform as, again, provide the site of nucleation rather than letting people go communicate, then they're going to do that anyway. That could
Right.
be one way to see what's going on.
That's really cool. Especially like I could see we brought up somebody like the group had brought up like a text communication platform during the game, you know, and then having that available afterwards and then using like doing what Abby's saying, finding strategies to like perpetuate the conversation. I'm also I'm catching up on the chat. Collect the chat after this. Yes, please. I agree with Maurice. If there's a way for me to save the chat before everyone goes, that will be sad for me if this goes.
So the chat gets saved as part of the recording. We haven't
so
been
good.
particularly great at sharing it after the fact, but we can look into doing that retroactively. Because yeah, some of these chats are very lively with links and stuff, and some of them are.
Yeah.
So
good point. We've never done that. I just upload the video and then delete it all.
Yeah.
David, I would love to make a framework for options to collect data from LARPs. I would
It
love
just
to.
feels like it's on brand.
Yeah.
I would love. I was like, I love a spreadsheet. Like, hold me back. That's great.
Like, why do it when you can make a framework about doing it?
What if I did both? What if I?
Or both? Yeah.
I did it and Lizzie Stark assist. Thank you. Okay, I'm caught up on the chat now as well.
One question I had about, again, the long-term learning is the vision that these players all come from the same organization, or that they're coming from several different ones?
Several different ones. So like it plays at a place like South by Southwest EDU. You know, you have people from Chicago, Cincinnati, and like Bloomington, Indiana. They play it and they're like, oh yeah, I should start a tiny remake learning in my town. And I feel like I understand why that might matter and how to get started.
Okay, because that does make the follow-on more difficult.
It does. It does. And I would say like that's the stretch goal, right? Like short term, we just like attitude shift is like highest priority, followed by skill building, followed by somebody actually unassisted starting. That's kind of the sequence, you know.
Yeah. And then another sort of logistical question that I think might inform some of these others is the vision here, like in your video, you mentioned somebody like walking up and joining mid-session. Is that the structure, or is it like there's a defined start and end and everybody's in the same session together?
Oh yeah, I probably misspoke. People join conversations, but like you're there start to finish for either the 3 hour or the 4 hour. There's no like, what are you guys doing? Let me get in.
So you don't have to solve the drop-in problem
on
top of all these other things.
No.
Yeah, I guess to echo Dave's point about the scales and measures, they absolutely exist. But I think another thing to probably to focus your sort of follow on to that question, like for example, there are like a billion scales for measuring skills, specific skills, but there are not scales for measuring skills. Similarly for beliefs, attitudes, and strategies. Like there's no generic approach for those. But enumerating the ones you want are going to be the focus. And then from there, you might be able to determine if measures exist for those specific things. Rather than others.
Yes. And to be clear, I have found one that is like attitude about multidisciplinary collaboration. Like I found a scale for that, right? Like belief in activities outside of work with other professions or cross orgs, like ability to problem solve and communicate. But given that, I think that what David is saying is extremely valid, which is all of those scales are so long and we kind of are trying to measure all of these things.
And it's I know we've tried to do like factor analysis and like shrink them, at least for ones around interest and enjoyment and some of these like high level, and it just, no, they already did that.
They already shrunk them.
Like, so they really just didn't, they fell apart when they got smaller. I'm kind of curious when you're thinking about that capture of all that though, if my assumption is right, that on one hand, you're trying to make a case that's evaluative and you're saying, this is worth your time and you should do it. And we've got some data to prove that. And then there's this other side of it, which is research and it's more emergent. And you're like, in what ways do LARPs relate with, you know, some change.
Yeah,
And I think
that's
those
such a
are
good
just
point.
different. And I don't know, it's always helpful to call that out. Like,
I want to
when
call
are
that
you in
out.
evaluative mode? When are you, because when you're evaluating, you just get to talk in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be really transparent. Like I think the good outcome for me is I want to be able to look people in the eyes and say, I'm asking you to sign up for this 3-hour thing and it is worth your time.
Right.
Or I learned that it's not worth it and I never run this because I know it's not worth people's
Yeah.
time. So that's the good ending.
Yeah.
That's my number one priority. So that might be different from,
It is. I think as
you
soon as
know.
you know, like the fundamental question is an evaluative one, it's
Mm.
we want to see this change in the world, and we
Mm.
did this thing.
Mhm.
Did that thing help us see that change? Like
Mhm.
it changes the way you ask it like things like validated instruments all of a sudden just get less interesting.
Well,
Because instead, I think you get into a mode of saying, well, what are the things that you care about, and is there evidence for them?
yep,
And you don't have to justify it in the same way of saying like there's,
that makes sense.
It's just a different kind of question.
Wow, I did not know that, and that is so helpful. Okay. Okay. Sorry, yeah, my mind has been blown. I did not think about it that way, but that's and sorry, I'm watching the time. I feel like I want to hand the mic back to Eric because I don't want to keep people over, but like thank you. That's really, really good.
Yeah, so I get so we're near time, and for people that have to jump off, that's totally fine. But a thing we have done with several of these is if Elaine, if you're still available, if people are still available, some people will stick around and we can continue to chat a bit longer. But for those that need to be watching the hour, we are there. Thank you all for joining us. In 2 weeks, we'll have another one from a different CMU team talking about a cybersecurity game. And if you have a project you want to talk about, we can add you to the list. We have lots of openings throughout the rest of summer. But again, I'm available for another 30 minutes or so. And so if others want to stick around and hang out, we can keep doing that.
That's great. I gotta hop off. Thank you very much. Send me the link at the end.
David. Thank you. Thank
Really
you.
good to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Elaine. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much, Maurice. Eric, let me check my calendar. I apologize in advance if I have to very rudely go when you were
Oh, no, it's
generously.
fine.
I'm gonna stop sharing because my calendar
Whatever, yeah.
looks crazy. Yeah, I can be up to 5 minutes late to my next meeting, but then I gotta drop.
Okay. I don't know if I have specific additional points to bring up than what I've already mentioned, but I think it's really interesting. I think there's some interesting, like kind of what Dave was saying. It seems like you're definitely more interested in kind of that evaluative mode over sort of the general science mode. But I think the science question here is how do you answer the evaluation question with a LARP?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so the science question
So
is kind of in the how do you come up with the data? How do you come up with the answers? It's how do you build that framework for proving
Yeah.
how do you build a framework for proving that a LARP works? That's the research question.
Yeah. Ooh. Are we still recording? Is that recorded? Yes.
We are,
Okay,
yeah.
good. Oh, good. Okay. Okay, that's great. Because that's yeah, like I would love to publish on both of those things, right? Or just like this works. And like if you want to measure a LARP, like here's what you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
Cool. And then yeah, happy to follow up with the like logistics and IRB and all that stuff.
I'm so grateful for you.
Nothing
That has
about
been
like
so intimidating.
similar to what Maurice said. Nothing about this concerns me, ethics wise. The one main thing the IRB is going to want you to do, particularly if microphones and stuff are involved, is that you do it in a closed session. Because our IRB is really Pennsylvania has a very expansive wiretapping law, and they're very particular
noticed.
about public reporting.
Yes.
But if you just put it in a room, everybody consents, you're fine. So, that's the only like major glaring thing that could possibly go wrong with this. And then the rest of it is coming up with all logistics and writing it down before you submit to the IRB. I think you should be able to do that pretty well.
I just need to learn how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody. This was incredibly helpful. Can't even tell you. Thank you, Eric. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.